Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So welcome to our March 12th, 2024 Tiverton School Committee meeting. We have one person signed up for open forum, Corey Marchand. Yes. Hi. So just come on up to the podium. Please be sure that the microphone is on. Just introduce yourself and your address.
Great. Hi, I'm Corey Marchand, mom of 3 boys in Tiverton schools. I have a 9-year-old in 3rd grade at Fort Barton and 2 middle schoolers. I've always been incredibly pleased with the school system. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for everything you've done for my children over the years. I wish I was better prepared, to be very honest with you. I feel like I didn't have a lot of notice about this meeting, but I felt like some of the things that I was hearing and seeing today were extremely concerning to me as a parent and as someone who grew up in town. So I feel like it's important for me just to say a couple of words about Fort Barton School and how important it is to me. The teachers at that school and the administrators have always gone above and beyond to make sure that my children are seen and heard. And you don't get that when children are in a larger environment. I know that one of the ideas that seems to be talked about a lot is putting all of the children in one grade level in a school together, or having combining schools in some way. When you have large numbers of children in one school, so for example, 100 3rd graders, there's a huge difference for that child to be one of 100 versus one of 35 or 40 or 45 children. They are able to get such individualized attention and support when they're in those smaller environments. And I just feel like it would be a true disservice to our kids to put them in a larger environment. It's one of the things I love about Tiverton. I appreciate it because I lived it, and I really I value the fact that my kids have had that here in town. While I know that you all have a lot of work in front of you in terms of trying to figure out how to solve this problem, I like to believe that there's another solution. I don't have all the answers. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I wish I could sit and analyze. I love to do that. I would love to spend more time looking at that. But once you look at salaries and healthcare, which are a huge expense, I feel like we have to look at other options for savings, whether that's looking at transportation. Transportation is a huge cost and a huge part of the budget. Is there a way that we can save? I know my kids, there aren't a lot of kids on those buses on some days. Like, that's one area to look at. Could we temporarily eliminate some of the extras? So the summer programming, tutoring. I know those things are important. I value them too, but is there a world in which we look at some of those other expenses and find ways to scale back? Because making a huge change and moving kids from one school into a larger environment, I just don't feel that's the answer. So I appreciate you listening to me today. Again, I wish I had more time to prepare, but I appreciate what you do, and I hope that you consider other options.
Thank you. I can certainly speak for myself. I appreciate your concerns, and I think, we will get to this later in the meeting. This is a budget process. It lasts up through June, and there's a lot of different factors involved, some of which we can control, some of which we cannot, and you'll, I'm sure, hear a lot more about a lot of those over tonight and as we move through the budget season. So thank you. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Ask for a vote. Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Ms. Pavo?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. Next item is item 6A, FICA alternative plan information, possible vote. Are we going to speak to that tonight, or you want to table that?
Just a little bit. I'm hoping Mr. Edwards is going to arrive.
Okay.
Yes, we need to table that then.
Okay, and then I'm going to table that for...
Table it off the agenda in case he does arrive.
No,
Yep,
just,
yep. Okay, so we'll table that for now.
Later in the meeting.
And okay, so next is item 6B, FY25, approve the FY25 budget number to be submitted to the Town of Tiverton, budget update and deficit discussion with possible vote. Dr. Sanchioni, and
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind,
Yep.
I would ask you to take care of new business. They're all quick, and I think item 6B might be a lengthy discussion, and so that the people here are waiting for those other things could be addressed sooner.
okay. So I'm going to ask for motion to move to new business items 7A, B, and C.
I'll
At
make
the
the
request of
motion
the
that we
superintendent.
move new business items 7A and B to next on the agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
I don't know what she said.
We're moving items 7A and B up
And C.
and C.
Well, is Representative Edwards here?
I don't
I don't
see him.
Bob.
But-
There's a lot
Yes, I
of
would
people in this
hold
room,
that.
so we can't address that if he's not here, can we?
Nope, you're going to have to hold that.
Okay. Ask for, ask for motion to move to item 7B and C.
I'll make the motion to move items 7B and C.
Second,
Any discussion? Mrs. Palish?
yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Ms. Pavo?
Yes.
I vote yes. So we are on item 7B, review and approve school calendar for the school year 2024-25. Possible vote. Dr. Sanchioni?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in your packet tonight, you have a proposed calendar for next school year 24-25. It follows the RIDE calendar sent out to all Rhode Island school district. It really parallels this year with school starting for students on August 29th, the standard vacations in December, February, and April. So I seek your approval this evening.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the calendar.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
For discussion?
Yep. Mrs. Pavo or Ms. Farnworth?
Thank you, Dr. Sanchioni. So if I'm reading this correctly, we will be, our students' first day of school will be Thursday, August 29th. And our students' last day of school, barring any extreme weather or other events, will be Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I'm going to assume, and I haven't gone through this exercise myself, that there is no conflicts with religious holidays coming up for this
So-
coming school year?
I would say no, only because we, again, work off the RIDE calendar. It has all those religious holidays on there, and then we consult all the principals about what's going on in their schools and things of that nature.
Okay, and then lastly, the election days. We have a primary election, I believe it is on September
10th?
10th, and the general election on November 5th. Will those be school days?
School days for our staff, non-school days for our students.
Okay. That's all the questions I had.
And just a comment that if anything does come up, that, you know, we certainly always have the ability to shift sort of before the, I mean, I know we don't like to do that,
Right.
but if something comes up in the next few weeks where we miss something and someone brings it to our attention, we do have a little bit of time to.
You do. I know
Okay.
parents rely on us to hopefully get it right
Right,
the first time.
exactly.
I think this time after doing it the last several years, I think we've got
Yes.
it narrowed down to
Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion? Artemis, any thoughts? You're living the experience. Although, are you a junior or senior this year? You're junior, so you. Okay, all right. I'm going to ask for a vote. Mrs. Pavo?
yes.
Ms. Farnworth?
Yes.
Ms. Palish?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is, oh man, I'm having trouble. Item 7C. And which is meet interim high school assistant principal, Derek Swensen, and the interim ranger principal, Gail Ponte. Dr. Sanchioni.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to work with two very talented educators who have been helping us out immensely this past school year per school committee request, or we get an opportunity to meet them tonight. So let me start with Gail Ponte, who's been the interim principal at Ranger. Gail, come on up. doing an amazing job. Gail has a wealth of experience coming to us from Middletown, big shoes to fill. Mr. Cabral is an amazing principal, but Gail stepped right in and been welcomed by the staff. So Gail, say hello.
Welcome.
Microphone.
Turn it on. There you go.
It's amazing how, after you're retired and you come back, how you jump right back into things. And I think the biggest reason why that happened is because the staff at Rangers really, like, top-notch. Opened their arms up to me, you know, kind of guided me along the way, and I think mutually I have their back, they have mine, and I think we're doing some really good things there. It's been a pleasure.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Well, welcome. Thank you for stepping in. Got
You had
some
big shoes
to fill.
Being in that school. Good luck
Great
to
staff,
you.
too.
Nice seeing you
And
again.
absolutely wonderful parents, especially some of the alumni parents. You know what I mean?
Got a pat on the back?
Yes, thank you.
Also
Yeah.
stepped in and has done an amazing job and continues to do an amazing job at the high school, the interim assistant principal, Derek Swensen.
Thank you, Chairman Luck and members of the committee, Superintendent. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. It's been a wonderful ride since I've gotten here in September. We have incredible kids, and incredible staff, and I thank Mrs. Craven for her leadership. We're doing great things here, and I hope to be sticking around to move forward with some of the initiatives we have coming up. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've heard some wonderful things from students, staff, and parents.
Glad we get that member.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming.
All right.
He shook your hand.
I see Ann Edwards, but not the right Edwards. We're looking for Jay and John. Jay. At any rate, so I am going to, Yeah? So I think we should move now to item 6B, FY25, approve FY25 budget number to be submitted to the Town of Tiverton, budget update and deficit discussion, possible vote. Dr. Sanchioni. I think we should probably proceed with a motion for the number to send to the town administrator and council with regard to the budget.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask for motion to approve a budget of $34,134,474, which represents a 4% increase over the local levy of FY24, with the projected state aid currently estimated at $5,697,155.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion's been made and seconded. I'm going to turn the floor to Dr. Sanchioni to talk us through this.
Do we want to vote this?
You want to just vote the number, yeah.
Okay. I can.
Just
have
a
vote.
point of clarification for
Yep.
us. So I think the number that we were working off of was a little bit different at the end there.
Which number?
34,300,811. People may have seen that number. I think it may still be on some of Peter's presentation, but we actually conferred with our attorney and made sure that we understood exactly how the calculation was going to work and what our legal limit is as a school committee. Important to understand, we have a legal limit. That's not necessarily the council's limit. It's not the community's limit, but we have a legal statutory limit of what we can ask for. And he did clarify that number for us, and that was the number that Mrs. Farnworth read off this evening.
Okay.
So,
All right,
pass
we're going
it?
to ask for a vote. Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes. Again, a total of $34,134,474, which represents a 4% increase over the local levy of FY24. That 4% is 1 million. I just want to read this into the record.
Lock the seats in the front, guy.
$1,093,743, with an estimated state aid of $5,697,155, which it is important to note represents a decrease from our FY24 state aid of $1,223,615, which comes up to 17.68%. So really a substantial decrease, and that's, you know, contributing a lot to our current issues financially. Okay. Now, can I turn it over?
Mr. Chairman?
Take a vote.
May I ask if we could return to old business A?
We didn't take a vote.
We did vote.
Did we vote?
We voted.
We voted on the budget.
Oh, we did on this, yeah, okay.
We voted.
We didn't continue with the deficit, but you
Right.
want to do this first? Okay.
I would
Yeah, no,
recognize Mr. Edwards
fine.
being here.
Okay, I'm going to return to item 6A. I think, yes, 6A. FICA Alternative Plan Information, possible vote. Mr. Edwards, you're up.
Quite the audience relative to the last time I was here. Been over this a couple
Me
of
too.
times. I think Ms. Roderick articulated it pretty well the first time this was brought up. I understand that there were some questions from the school committee. I will tell you that a lot's changed since this idea was first brought forth, and it's according to superintendent's numbers, you guys are facing a rather large hole. I think that it would be ill-advised to walk away from any savings even as small as these are. So ultimately, it's a plan that would save the district about $20,000 a year. Maybe less, depending on what happens.
Dr. Larkin?
Ms. Palish?
I wasn't at any of those previous meetings, so could you just summarize for me? We're
Absolutely.
basically shifting,
Yeah, so.
just summarize for me what we're
Absolutely.
doing.
So essentially what happens, this is something that's only available to government organizations. And the state actually does have one of these plans as well. But in lieu of, for part-time employees, paying the district matching 6.42% after tax with the employees paying 6.42% after tax, you shift that burden away from the district and the after-tax contribution into FICA, which is Social Security. And those employee dollars are taken out pre-tax. So the net to the employee's paycheck is typically a slight bump up for those part-time employees. And those dollars are invested into some type of an investment vehicle. It's required by law that it be a fixed interest vehicle. So whether that's an annuity contract or some type of a stable value fund, ultimately that's up to the district to decide. There's very few providers in the space. I do want to call out at the original meeting when this was first brought up, I believe Member Farnworth raised the question as to why the third-party administrator wasn't somebody more local. And the answer to that is there's really only, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 third-party administrators in the country that do this. So Admin Partners, who would be the third-party administrator in this case, actually is the most local, and they're located in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. The other TPAs exist in Florida, Utah, there's like 3 in California. And so that's pretty much it. It's a slight bump in pay for your part-time employees. Most of whom, I would wager would rather the dollars than, Social Security credits. And depending on, where the employee is in their career path, might be somebody who's towards the end of their career and values the dollars more than, credits which aren't really even going to count towards the Social Security calculation. You fully vest in Social Security after 10 years of contributing.
Okay. I'm going to ask for motion to open the discussion to approve the switch to the FICA alternative plan.
Make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? Mrs. Palish?
Can I just ask,
Sure.
one of the questions I think I saw on tape that Member Farnworth asked was, have we polled or surveyed the employees this would impact at all? And I think you had suggested we didn't, or we shouldn't, and I'm
It's
just.
not a individual election. It's an all or nothing proposition. Like I said, this is $20,000 more back into your budget. And I mean, again, the
So
state.
I'm just trying
yeah.
to so basically we're shifting, instead of putting the retirement away for them, we're sort of shifting, I mean, they can do it or they can not do it.
No, so they would all be into this program. So the way it works right now, if you're a part-time employee, you pay, it's like 7 and change percent, 6.42% of which goes into Social Security.
Right.
And the district matches 6.42%
Right.
of Social Security. So instead of those dollars going into the Social Security Trust, which is an, use it or lose it proposition once you do exercise Social Security, those dollars are now directed into an individually owned account, which is mandated by law to be invested in a fixed interest vehicle. And then when the employee separates from service, they could choose to pick it up and roll it over into a Roth IRA or regular IRA, whatever investment vehicle they choose. The key is that the employee then has control over those dollars. And again, this is a function that is only allowed for governmental organizations. And as I mentioned earlier, the state of Rhode Island does do one of these plans. I believe they use TIAA as the investment vehicle. Every state in the country pretty much does it. A lot of municipalities across the country do it. The reason why I think we haven't seen this done here in New England down to the municipal and school level is because, we're kind of a puritanical society up here. This is, these vehicles were invented long after, school systems had been around in New England. And so, naturally we're the last to adopt. And for what it's worth, this has been something I've raised that I think we should be doing on the town side as well. We just haven't had the opportunity to get there yet.
Anything else, Deb?
No.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is this something you have raised with the town council? I haven't seen it on any agendas.
It hasn't been on the agendas now. I brought it up several times in discussion. As I'm sure you're aware, we're running through several contract negotiations right now on the school side, on the town side. We've had a number of issues come up. There just hasn't been space in the agendas to bring this forward. Nor has the administrator had the time to take a look at, what those savings would be. But now that we're in budget season, I think it's something that will come back around.
Okay. I just want to make note that we've been given no documentation on this topic at all this evening, and that's just a statement. I would also like to reiterate my concerns from the first time when Ms. Roderick presented this to us several months back. It's a small group of employees that we're speaking of here, part-time employees who get no benefits from us or the town. They are also the lowest paid employees in our school district. I know that Dr. Larkin and I had both felt strongly that the collective bargaining unit perhaps be approached about this proposition to see if their members wanted to take advantage of something like this, because I really feel as though our country's Social Security benefit is meant to be there for all of us after working our lives. And I realize there are certain groups of individuals in our country, in our state, that do not contribute to Social Security by contract. But I would hesitate to make that change on behalf, again, of a small group of employees here who may not even be aware that this would be coming. So that is my continued concern. On top of which, I don't feel it's my role to assume anyone's career direction or analyze where they are in the life of their Social Security quarters and all of that, because while they're on this program, they will not be contributing to Social Security, and their earnings will not count towards Social Security earnings as part of their career, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Correct.
So those are my continued concerns.
Okay. Mrs. Pavo? Mr. Dakotas?
No.
Okay. So if I'm to understand this properly, you're really just shifting from one retirement plan to another, over which they actually have a little bit more autonomy.
Correct.
Do they have a menu then of plans that they can choose from based on their projected retirement and sort of the mix of investments that
Yes,
plan has? And
so ultimately, once the employee does separate from service, they would be able to, take those dollars, roll them over into an individual retirement account, and then make those elections themselves. The statutes are pretty clear that the only investment option available would be a fixed interest vehicle. The plus side here is that if you look at the long-term rates of return on Social Security, I think it averages about 2.5%. With interest rates being where they are today, the employees should be getting a much higher rate of return than they would on dollars going into Social Security. And again, as you are probably aware, Social Security is not something that is portable or something you could leave behind to, members of your family or to a spouse. It's if you pay into Social Security your entire career, you retire, and the next day, you drop dead. All your dollars that you contributed to Social Security stay in the pot, and they go to other people. In this instance, those dollars would, be part of that person's estate, and so, they would have the ability to designate beneficiaries on those accounts. And
well, that's not exactly true. There are survivor benefits for Social
so
Security.
let's say you're a single individual.
Yes. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that that's clear. Okay. And when you said it's a fixed interest vehicle, so while they're employees of Tiverton, it would just be one plan, not
Correct. It would
several
be
plans.
It would
where,
be a
again,
singular investment option. Typically, these are funded by, like I said, either insurance contracts or stable value contracts. The number of providers that actually do this has dwindled significantly in the last few years, because ultimately you're talking about very small dollar amounts and a lot of accounts, which servicing those accounts is costly. So, for instance, I believe it's one of the vendors here for the 403B plan, Security Benefit, no longer does these, as an example. So you would have to, probably piggyback off of, the same vendor that the state uses in TIAA, which, again, as I mentioned, those long-term rates of return for Social Security at 2.5%. TIA's fixed interest contracts are typically 3.5% floors. So they're coming out ahead, even in a down interest rate environment.
What happens if the vendor, for want of a better term, I don't know if that's the proper one, goes bankrupt or isn't solvent?
So again, that's why you typically fund with insurance contracts. They're individually owned by the employee. So they're retirement assets in their name. It's not like they're invested in some black hole where somebody can go and steal the money. And again, I would suggest selecting a reputable provider, somebody like TIAA that's been around since long before 403Bs were created.
Right.
I think it goes back to 1908 when Andrew Carnegie created the Teachers Insurance and Annuity Organization.
Well, then who does select the vendor? Is it the district?
The district would, yes.
Okay. All right. Those are all my questions.
I just have one question.
Yep.
One question, Mr. Edwards. Do you have to be either vested or have contributed to this plan for a certain number of years or time? If you...
No. So unlike the state pension or other, state retirement vehicles, the dollars go in, they are 100% the employees, because it is the employees' dollars that are going in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mike, I have nothing.
All right. I'm going to ask for a vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Could I just get one point of?
Sure.
Oh, we did have a motion and a second. I don't even know what we're approving here. Are we approving a directive to the administration to look into this? I mean, we don't have anything to go by here. I feel as though I'm really at a disadvantage to take a vote.
I think the vote was...
What are we voting on?
Was to implement the FICA plan.
But we have nothing. We have nothing in writing. We don't know who the vendor will be. We don't know any kind of due diligence that's been done on behalf of the administration. We don't know, we certainly haven't asked our employees if they want this. So what is it we're really voting on here? Is it just because we have a town councilor in front of us that we need to vote on it?
No,
I don't
That's
think,
going over
we
the
shouldn't,
line. I'm
we
sorry,
shouldn't,
but
I have
we
to
shouldn't
ask that
treat,
question.
we shouldn't treat guests like that. That's not right.
I have to ask that
So-
It's
question.
not a fair
All right,
question.
I've called for a vote, so I think you have to vote.
I just have a point of order, and I think it'll be pretty easy to take care of it, is we have voted this down in the past. I think it needs to be brought back. I mean,
We
this-
didn't vote it down, it was 2-2. Am I
well,
correct
that's
on
a
that?
no, though. I think it's easy. I mean, if you disagree, that's fine. I just think
Okay.
it probably should be reconsidered.
All right, so who made the original motion? Can someone remind me?
Elaine made
I made the
the
motion.
motion,
You
I
did the
seconded the
second.
motion.
Okay, Elaine, can you withdraw your motion, and I'm going to make a motion to reconsider?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to reconsider our prior vote to implement a FICA
Yeah, just proceed.
plan.
I'll second that.
Okay, so now the vote is to reconsider, so we have to vote to reconsider, and then we can make a motion to
Correct.
actually implement the plan, if that's what we choose. If there's any discussion on the motion to reconsider,
No,
hearing none. Mr. Dakotas?
yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
No.
Mrs. Pallas?
Yes.
I vote yes. So we have now made a motion to reconsider the prior vote. So I'm then going to ask for a motion to implement a FICA plan in place of Social Security contributions for our part-time employees under the supervision of our Director of Finance and Administration. Can I have that?
I'll second that.
Well, I'm asking for the motion, so technically.
I'll make the
can't
motion.
make
I thought you were
motion,
making the
but-
motion, sorry.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Ms.
Thank you.
Barnworth, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to add to
No.
your prior? Mrs. Palish, any other thoughts?
No.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Barnworth?
No.
Mrs. Palish?
I am going to say no, but only because this actually sounds great, and it sounds like it's savings, but I am concerned not having run this past at least our collective bargaining unit or the employees who we have a really, really good relationship with. I actually think they would love it, but I'm only voting no because of that concern only.
Okay. Well, I'm going to vote yes, but I would like to hear back if there is concerns raised once it's being presented to our employees. I know you guys would bring that to us so that we can sort of address their concerns and/or change what we're doing if that does not seem to be in their best interest from their opinion. So, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
for
Thank you,
what it's
Mr.
worth, too, I mean, ultimately, I think you're going to have to vote again to select the ultimate vendor that you're going to utilize, so,
Okay,
yeah, I'm sure it'll be back before you again.
all right. Thank you.
No, he's not going to make it tonight.
Okay, so we can just take that up next time. So now, the item for which everyone has been waiting. So we're returning to item 6B, the FY25 budget. We have voted a number. I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Sanchioni, who's skillfully avoided it so far, but I think now you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to bring you back and update you on our budget, and as you've asked me to also articulate, as you know, we have a pretty significant deficit, and how do we close that deficit? So we'll also present to you a couple options on that this evening. So just for background information, and because we have a number of people here.
So actually, just, you can see it up here. You don't have to turn around as well. So I see everybody like reaching around, straining their necks. So it's up there too.
So we constructed the FY25 budget. We have 312 employees, and our budget, 70% of our budget is our employees, using round numbers. And we have contractual obligations, and all those numbers on the side there are what those obligations are. And in the end, to take our staff from this year to next year costs $884,942. Not adding one single staff person, just maintaining what we're doing, honoring our contracts and mandated cost. So that's 70% of our budget. The other 30% of our budget are our expenses. And here what I'm showing you is the increase. This is the increase in that account. So medical and dental premiums are going up 8%, and there's the impact of that. We have no control over that. This is an impact on our budget that we have to account for. Other benefits are FICA, our unemployment, a few other accounts in there. They also are going up based upon the figures with that to $237,000. We have contracts for transportation. Transportation is mandated by Rhode Island law, and that account is going up $96,000. We have an account for repairs and maintenance, and we budget that to actuals, and we've been significantly low in that category for the last 2 years. We've had issues with the heating system in some of our schools, so we want to budget that to a number that we feel like we're going to need next year. So that's an increase of $111,000. Technology is just the cost of all of our subscriptions, all the things that we currently do. We're not adding anything here. We're just trying to maintain the current programs that we have. The thing that impacts us the most is special education. ODPs is out-of-district placements. We have students that need services outside of our school system. Those schools can raise their tuition as they see fit. We also have to provide one-on-one support for a number of these students, along with transportation and a number of things, and that's really what's driving our expenses here. It's an increase of over $1 million. Tuitions to other school districts, these are the students who go to other public schools for CTE, and then everything else on our budget goes up a little bit, whether it's our liability insurance, tuition, supplies, just things that we have to count on, water, legal, things of that nature. So again, we're not adding any programs to our budget. We're not doing anything different than we're doing this year. And that increase on that side of the budget is $2.6 million, again, using round numbers.
So, Dr. Sanchioni, not to be too pedantic about it, but these numbers, these are increases to the line items. These are not the line items themselves, just so everybody understands that. So these are the increases to all of these things. And as you pointed out, transportation is a state mandate, including transportation to the parochial schools, but not necessarily all private schools, correct?
Not all private. Some parochial, to Met Academy, to Rogers for NACTAC.
So, and that is by law, not by the school
That is by
committee's
law.
generosity.
No.
Although I guess it is the generosity of the taxpayers who are a forced generosity. So it's not, that transportation line is pretty fixed.
Yeah, pretty much everything on this list is fixed other than, the last line, all other, that, I guess it's more of a necessity. But when you see us come back for the solution to the deficit, you're going to see that we're going to trim some of these lines.
Okay.
But this is how we constructed the budget to start. So this creates some issues for us, and I want to outline those issues here. So we have rising expenses. If you added up the $800,000 for our employees and the $2.6 million, that adds up to $3.5 million. We have a structural deficit, which means last year, the budget we're in now, the school committee voted wisely to add $1.2 million in one-time money. And last year, we laid off 5.5 employees, and if you hadn't used that money, those layoffs would have been much significant. So it was a wise move on the school committee. But what happens is, when we start putting together FY25, you've got to find $1.2 million right away to break even. We took a drastic cut in state aid, $1.2 million. It's the largest cut of any municipality in Rhode Island, and momentarily I'll show you why we took that cut in state aid. And as you voted tonight, we're only allowed to ask for a certain increase in our budget, which is about a little over $1 million. So if you need 3.5 and you have to make up 1.2 and you're losing 1.2 from the state and you only can receive $1 million, you're looking at a significant deficit. So I want people to understand that deficit.
Dr. Sanchioni, can I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
When the committee votes to close the initial structural deficit, we used funds from Medicaid that was left over, fund balance, and ESSER funds, correct?
Last year was just, you had already used up ESSER funds, so last year was just Medicaid and fund balance.
Okay. And when we do that, we have to kick that deficit every year down the road, correct? It doesn't go away.
No, you start $1.2 million in the hole every year.
Okay. Just for an understanding, so we're starting in the hole, $1.2 million before we do anything. Thank you.
Dr. Larkin,
Yep.
procedurally, I think, that's a good point, Mike. Do we want to ask our questions as we're going along, or how do you want to do this? Because I think, like Mike, that was a very good
Yeah.
clarification. So how would you like the board
My preference would be for people to ask the questions or make their points as we're going along, unless there's some objection.
So the board will go through this, the board will ask their questions, we'll go through the presentation, the board will ask their questions, and then we'll open it up.
Correct.
Okay.
That's,
But if we have a question as we're going along, like Mr. Dakotas just did, just
chime in. If it
please
gets
ask-
unruly, I'll
ask to have the floor.
throw this
Okay.
at you.
All right.
So, that, unless there's some objection from everybody else, that's the way I think would be.
Nope, that sounds good.
Okay. Go ahead.
So let's understand that deficit a little deeper then. So our current budget this year is $35.5 million. That includes the $1.2 million you added in. You voted a number tonight, and actually the number you voted was less than I thought we were going to vote for. So that 34.3 that's up there is now 134,474. It's 166,000 less that now we're going to need to account for. So I'll continue the presentation, but I'll make a point that when I start showing you how to close this deficit, we're going to have to go back and find another 166,000 in cuts. If we had funded the budget with those increases for our employees and what we had in our expense side, we would have needed $39 million budget. So when you add up the 1.2 million you use, the 888 you need to add for personnel, and the 2.6 million in expenses, there's your deficit of $4,789,000, which is now $166,000 higher.
So,
Sorry?
yep,
Yeah,
go back.
to that side for a second.
So just to clarify, because, this question was asked, so we knew we were spending $35.5 million and that we were essentially using savings to pay for it, knowing that when those savings ran out, we would have to deal with the deficit. And I know we've been talking about this for at least 5 years.
Yeah, momentarily I'll show you a longitudinal
okay.
list of all the.
But while we were spending, I just want to go back to that point, maybe you're coming up to this, the staff we were cutting?
Yeah. we
Okay,
cut
so I'll
5.5,
wait.
yeah.
I'll wait. Anyone else?
Okay, so there's the deficit, but one of the things that contributes to this deficit is that reduction in state aid, because we usually receive an increase every year, and this year we're receiving 1.2 million. So we called the state, the finance office at RIGL, and said, hey, can you explain to us why we're losing 1.2 million? And I know that they're going to be coming to a meeting, is it April 1st, Dr. Larkin?
Tentatively.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they're going to be there to explain this deeper. But our conversations with them was they broke the 1.2 million down for us, and they said, okay, Dr. Sanchioni, you have 60 fewer students from year to year, and you have less students in poverty. That's getting you a reduction of 227. Your high-cost special needs placements are down, and hence we try to bring more students in-house, but so we don't get the reimbursement as high as we have in the past. So that's 349,000 of that. And the third thing was what they call a state share ratio. And we lost 681 on that, and they calculate a state share ratio based on property tax valuation, median family income, and, our state share ratio has been going down year after year after year. I gave you the last 3 years there, so it was 29.9, and went to 25.7, and next year it's 24.7, so it's down 5.2% over 2 fiscal years, and so that was a contributing factor there, so.
So dig into that a little bit more for me, Amy. So the state share going down means what?
So according to the state calculation, based on data provided to them from the municipalities and the census, that the state feels it should pay less in education funding and shift that to the local municipality.
So according to and I know it's a funding formula.
It is a formula.
So according to the funding formula, they feel that, again, they feel, whether anybody agrees with it or not, that the town can contribute $681,548 more given our property values and our median incomes.
Cor-
Yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Based on that formula, yes.
Thanks.
And I'll just reiterate that if, when that meeting takes place, whether it's April 1st or not, that RIDE officials are prepared to attend and dig into this.
Okay, great.
So this is, to your point, Ms. Palish, this is the historical look at appropriations to the school over the last 7 fiscal years, starting with FY18. Some numbers that we've highlighted there in green and yellow. The first one in green is the increase from the town. And so, and if I just read it off in order, negative 0.5, 0.4, 5.1, 0, 3.9, 3.7, 3.0. And so you can see then corresponding in the yellow is that when the school committee was kicking in these one-time funds, so, you know, as to Ms. Palish's point, we knew this day was coming because in FY19, for example, you added $2.5 million to keep the budget alive. FY20, you added $857,000. Now, 800 in FY21, you added $675. Now we're starting to run out of fund balance in Medicaid at that point, and you know the state, federal government came in with ESSER funds, and you know we would have had this conversation 3 years ago if we hadn't received ESSER funds. So in FY22, you use ESSER funds to $757. FY23, $1.3 million of ESSER funds. And then last year, fund balance started to build up again because we weren't using it because of the ESSER funds, and you were able to use $1.2 million. But along the way, the last column, even though we were receiving whatever we received from the town and or the state, whatever you're using in one-time funds, in FY21, we cut 27 positions. In FY22, we cut 4.5 positions, and then this past year, we cut 5.5. So we've been making some significant cuts to our personnel. It's always the last resort when you're looking at a budget. We try to take every other means or options to us, but at some point, you're just stuck with nowhere else to turn. And the last number I'll just point out on there is right below the green box is what the state has been to contribute to us. So it's almost like if I go on the last 3 years, you know, the town appropriation in FY22 was 3.9, but the state was down 7.7. So it's like one step up, 2 steps back. You know, in FY23, we both were up for a total of 3.9, and then this year, town granted us 3, state was down 3.9. Again, it's like one step up, 2 steps back. And this has caused this structural deficit, this, you know, machinations with our budget.
So we get, I'm sorry. So we get an amount from the town and we get an amount from the state. That's our total. And when that, it is what it is. I mean, when the state goes down and it's not being made up some other way. Okay. Do you talk about the fund balance history at all at any point, or would this be a good opportunity to just briefly discuss that? Or would you rather do it later, Amy? My quick question is, there has been some question about, well, in those years where, you know, we were using these one-time funds, that our fund balance was actually rising some of those years. And you don't have to, we have the detail, I know you get, but why would that be, Amy?
I'm sorry, why was the fund balance rising?
Yeah, so if we're using one-time funds and we're saying we're deficit spending, how can we be putting money back into the fund balance in those years?
So in last year, we were able to, last year being FY23, we were able to shift some expenses to grants. We ended up with additional allocations later in the year that we hadn't anticipated. We also had some small beneficial adjustments in special education that allowed us. The year before, we came in almost exactly on budget, except within $50,000, so there's really no heavy increase there. Prior to that, we did have a refund from the region in FY21. We did have a refund from the region of the fund balance of a significant amount.
Oh, when they gave money back because they were anticipating dissolving the region? That was the regional special education, or what was that?
So they had their audit and their estimates at the beginning of the year, and the assessments in the year prior, which would be 2020, ended up being higher than actual, so they returned that assessment.
And that was $900K, I want to say, that you had told us at some
No, that
point?
was $300,000.
Oh, okay.
And in that same year, we were able to shift some special ed expenses
that's
to
what I see.
COVID-19
Okay.
and IDEAB, and we also had several other grants that year that we don't normally have as a, I don't want to use the word benefit of COVID. And the year prior to that, where we used the $857,000, that was a dip into the fund balance. So there are any number of things that can affect the fund balance, and when we have the opportunity to shift general fund expenses to allowable grants, we do that.
But the grants, these aren't guaranteed grants, to your point. It's every year, there's.
There are some that are entitlement grants, like Title I, Title II, IDEAB, and so forth. But during the COVID years, we not only had the COVID funds for supplies and cleaning and things like that, but we had a substitute grant. We also had workshare program. There were sort of all these COVID-era programs that were one-time grants during those years that we took advantage of.
Okay.
So, and maybe if I try and ask this question, it will explain it, because it can be very confusing. In a sense, we're really talking about two sequential processes. So one is we have a budget. We know what the level of service is optimal for our students. That exceeds what is appropriated by the town and by state aid, and so we have used our fund balance. So we have to do that first. We cannot spend money we don't have. We have to allocate that money.
Correct.
That depletes the fund balance. Over the last few years, there have been other sources of revenue that have come in towards the end of the fiscal year that has made the fund balance grow again, which then tends to be reallocated the next school year or into the next fiscal year in order to close these gaps that we've been sort of kicking down the road for about 5 years.
Yes, via the fund balance.
Via the fund balance.
Yep.
So when, it's not really a windfall, but when we get additional revenue through grants, through Medicaid, through special ed funding, through ESSER, through all these different things over the last several years, that money has really just been allocated the next year to close the gap between what is appropriated, what is state aid, and what we know is being the sort of level of service that we're trying to achieve for our students.
For all intents and purposes, yes. It's
Okay.
not necessarily a one-for-one, but
No, not
the,
every- yeah,
the theory
but-
holds, yes.
But the cycle kind of
Correct.
tends to repeat itself
Correct.
each year, where we've been able to come up with enough money to close the gaps in the funding. And I don't know if you want to go back to the last slide, Peter. One of the things that's important to understand is that on the left, what you see are school years. The second number always corresponds to our fiscal year. And one of the more glaring issues has been the 0% that was in basically the 2021 school year, where you can see that the town appropriation was 0. And that was after actually having been approved. The Budget Committee actually approved 2% that year, but that was the COVID year. And the concern in September of 2020, when we actually adopted the budget, was that we didn't really know what the revenue shortfalls were or were not going to be based on taxes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the school committee acquiesced in a 0% budget, even though we knew that that was going to have a reverberation over the next several fiscal years. And that is one of the things that has driven us to the point where we are right now.
Correct.
Dr. Larkin,
Yes, Mrs. Farnworth.
thank you for that. I think you put it well. I do want to turn my focus to the current day. We have in our fund balance
So I'm
through.
coming up to that, Ms. Vanderforth, if you want to. I'm coming up to that.
You are? Okay,
Yes.
I will wait for you then.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's a great segue, though. I appreciate that. So everything we've spoken about today is really the past and how we got here to where we are today. And hopefully it's clear to people that, we have this deficit. We have this deficit that was created by, past structural deficits, cuts in state aid, and rising expenses, all within, the realm of our just doing normal business. So you've asked me to figure out, okay, give you some presentations, how are we going to close this gap? So, here's our first iteration of that. So the deficit's 4.7 million. I would request that you, and I know you're not going to vote this tonight, so I'm just giving you solutions. The fund balance in Medicaid has $1.3 million in it as we currently sit today. If you were to use that, it would bring the deficit down, and again, I'll speak to round numbers, like 3.5 million. I've asked both our unions to consider dropping their contract, renegotiating it from 2.5% to 2%. That's not a given, but it would save us $177,000. I cut administrative raises from 2.5 to 1. That saved $28,000. And so if you go back to that slide where I was showing you our rising expenses, so we cut $200,000, but we've cut expenses so many years. I'm giving you a precursor that I'm worried about this. I think if we have any type of roof leak or budget boiler issue or things like that, we are not going to be in a position to really take care of that. This is cutting way too deep. But we always go everywhere before we go to people. And so doing these things brings that deficit down to basically $3 million. So now we're in a predicament. Like, how are we going to close $3 million? So I'm going to bring up what we're calling option one.
Before you move on, if you use 1.3 million of fund balance and Medicaid, what does that leave?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Other than what we would bring in on
Other-
Medicaid in the future
correct.
year.
All right, well, we can continue, but we're going to have to discuss that. Like, we're nothing.
This is, again,
Yeah,
first
all right.
time we've discussed it. We're
Nope,
giving
that's
you-
fine, yep.
And just to get back to that point, that money that tends to come in towards the end of the fiscal year, we can't budget based on that. We can only use that for closing a deficit. Okay.
Correct. That in particular, when we say revenue coming in, it's additional allocation for our entitlement grants that is not assessed by RIDE until around this time during the year.
And how much does that vary? It varies quite a bit, at least in
It
my
can.
experience.
It can.
Okay.
So, it can vary from 25,000. There are other grants, depending on their funding and use, can be 100,000. It just depends, and it's unpredictable.
Yeah, and I guess that's my point, is if I said to you, how much do we tend to get every year? You're not going to give me a number because
Correct.
you'll be proven
I could
wrong.
probably give you an average over the last several years, but with any specificity in any given year, no.
There's no guarantee to that.
Correct.
Okay.
So using those methods up there, and again, I know you'll want to consider them. Again, that would bring the deficit down to 3 million. So I'm going to show you a couple options now, and it's all personnel. And, as superintendent, this is the last thing you want to do. We've worked hard the last 5 years to build this district up through hiring great people, to training them, to providing the correct curriculum, to providing great PD, and the results are paying off. You've seen our success on RICAS and SAT and rising graduation rates, and just the overall culture and climate in the district is exceptional, and this is really going to cut into that. So these are options for you to consider. I want you to know that every position on here, we spoke to these people personally today because we didn't want anyone to be blindsided. I personally went to Fort Barton today, and our principals spoke to the other people in their buildings. It's a tough conversation. It's the one thing any administrator does not want to do. So I want you to know that too, that we pride our people. We pride on being transparent and forthcoming, and let people know what's going on. So Danny, if you can bring up option one. And I apologize if that's hard. We kept playing with, thank you, Danny. So this, in essence, devastates the district. This cuts every reading specialist, math specialist, guidance counselors, adjustment counselors, bridge educators. You know about the bridge program, the amazing success we've had with that. I've already said reading specialists, math specialists. And I won't read the whole list to you. This is a painstaking process that we work with our administrators, and we sit down with the union. We talk about, impacts here. You have to preserve your core, your classroom teachers. There's certain classes we have to preserve at the high school that are required for graduation. But what this does is this hurts our system K-12. Like, kids are going to lose a lot in this. Every school is losing their specialist, every school is losing an SEL staff member. It's just, you know, we shudder when we look at this list, but this adds up to $3 million. And below the orange bar there, you'd ask me to cost out if you were to consider activities and sports and so forth, and that's not in this calculation, but again, you asked for a total, and you can see it there, it would save $485,000. So again, I want to make a point that this is a K-12 haircut that just really hurts everywhere. Now, if you bring up option 2, Danny. So option 2 for your consideration, and again, it's an option, is closing Fort Barton. And you can see here that it saves about 12 positions that on that list are critically needed positions. But it eliminates a lot of things in the middle, technology, utilities, natural gas, big savings there. Positions at the top that would be, when you're closing a school, you'd have those positions at the other schools. And then even with that closure, you can see below in the third section of that document that we still had to make some cuts to other positions. We just couldn't get the $3 million. Well, what this does is it preserves the guidance counselors at the elementary, the adjustment counselors at the elementary, the reading specialist across the district, the math specialist across the district. There is some cuts there, but it's preserving at least 1 or 2 in every school, and it's preserving services. Like our kids will come to school and receive the same services they're receiving this year, just in different buildings. Well,
Guys, we will, absolutely, you're going to get a chance to thank you. Thank you, absolutely. We promise. We promise. Go ahead, Peter.
and again, these are options. If you school committee, you'll have the final say in this. If the school is, the priority, then you go to option 1, and you have a district that doesn't have many services for students. If you
Okay, so I'm
We'll
gonna.
give everyone a chance to speak.
Yeah, everyone will have a chance to
We won't shout at
speak.
you guys.
All right,
We won't shout.
Mike. Everyone.
Seeing these for the first time, so we have lots of questions too.
Okay. So,
Nope, we know.
all right, everyone will have an opportunity to speak, okay? But we do need to be able to maintain the order of the meeting. So I just ask everybody to bear with us and let the superintendent present. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I know this is painful, and it's, I'll articulate that there's a parent forum set up for next week. That email or letter has gone out this evening. You should receive it. It's not like we're not trying to be transparent. The school committee asked to see this first, so we're obliging them. The only thing we did today was inform our employees who are on this list because we felt in good conscience that that would be the fair and the right thing to do. So certainly wasn't meant to leave parents out of the conversation. As you've heard me say, you'll receive an email about a forum next Tuesday, and then the next school committee meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. So we'll move forward with you. So it wasn't intentional at all to not communicate with you. It was simply, we only communicated with our employees, and the school committee asked to see this first.
Well, you have known for 5 years, but haven't addressed.
Okay, so,
Okay.
All right, we're not going to get anywhere
All
doing it this way.
right, Peter,
Yep.
go ahead and continue.
it's important that I've shown 2 options, and, these aren't created in a vacuum. This is created in working with every administrator in the district and consulting with the union and trying to make the best, create options that are in the best interest of our students. Our North Star always is what's in the best interest of our students. You can compare option 1 to option 2 yourself, and you can see a drastic reduction in services for students in option 1 compared to option 2, which is why we created option 2. I know you're not going to make any
So-
decisions this evening.
No, I know. So, Dr. Larkin, do you want to go a member at a time and have our questions on option 1 and option 2, perhaps? Or do you want to start all our questions on option 1 and then go to option 2? How do you want to address, proceed for us?
Why don't we let Dr. Sanchioni continue his presentation?
That's,
I thought he was done.
Yeah.
Oh, you are done?
You've got a we've got a $3 million deficit if those other things are palatable to
All right,
you.
so then, yeah, I will open up the floor to questions by the committee and then by the public. Mrs. Palish?
So, option 1. So before I get to that, there was some question earlier about transportation, energy, those kind of things. Again, I know we discussed this, but we have contracts. So those dollars are set by contract because we already have approved contracts for transportation, energy, those sorts of things.
Correct.
So that's contractual right now. We unless we ask them to reopen, those are set costs.
Correct.
We're estimating things like health insurance to the best of our ability. They give us increases. So I just wanted to make
Correct.
sure that people knew that we have addressed all of those other things certainly in previous meetings.
And
So,
just, Ms. Palish, while you're speaking of transportation,
Yep.
I think it's worth mentioning that the district only provides what's legally required. We don't do any extra transportation, only what's legally required by law.
so option 1, we would have no specialists?
As I was saying to you, we've got $3 million to account for.
No, I get it. I'm just
I guess I
trying
want to tee it up and you can't cut the core, right? You can't cut a classroom teacher at the middle school, at the high school, and at the elementary.
But is
So
this all specialists, I guess?
That's the only place left to go.
Okay. So my concern
And it's
with.
not just specialists.
No.
You've got you got
No,
administration on there, you've got
No, I know, but my
bookkeepers, you've got
concern is
custodians.
these specialists, none of these options are great. This is the first time we've started talking about them. There might be an option 3, 4, and 5 that comes. So just understand this. We're just now wrapping our head around it. We have to have a balanced budget. We cannot have a budget that deficit spends. It has to be balanced by the end of June or 30 days within the end of June. So we're trying to get out ahead of it because certainly it wouldn't have been fair to anyone to say, well, let's wait till June 30th when we have a council budget and then let's start talking about the cuts. So that's the reason we insisted on starting to have these conversations now, and it may not look like these when we're done, but this is where we're starting. So my concern, I'll just say my concern is when we eliminate specialists, guidance counselors, bridge programs, bridge educators, those are our students who need, who really have a great need, and we want to try to always bring them up to where they need to be to have them be successful. And I do, this does greatly concern me, knowing that extra help would not be there. But, again, none of the options are good, but that would be just my concern. Can I ask, and this may not be a popular question, but that's okay, I'm going to ask it anyway. Why Fort Barton? Why not Pecasset? Why not?
Great question.
Ranger?
So it's not about Fort Barton at all. It's if you're going to reconfigure the district, so you could pick any one of the 3 schools, I guess. But if you're going to reconfigure the district and you're going to link your grade levels together, you've got pre-K, K1 together, those students cannot be on the second floor. So by default, Ranger.
They have to be at Ranger?
They have to be at Ranger. So then you look at 2 facilities, Fort Barton and Fort Barton and Pecasset. And so it's not about the people who work there and all that, because those people will all be, moved to the grade levels they teach and so forth. But Pecasset has a full gym, a full cafeteria, a full library. It's a bigger building. It has greater facilities. So when you evaluate what's in the best interest of students, which is always what we do, that's a better facility for students. So it would house,
Guys, you will have your, I promise.
Everyone will
you'll
have an
your turn.
opportunity, everyone will have an opportunity to speak.
I promise.
But we do need to maintain the decorum of the meeting. so that we can, this is a civil
'Cause it
society.
When I
We need to
tell you
treat
this
each
is
other
our
with
first time
civility.
seeing this, we are looking at this for the first time with you, so we have lots of questions, and unfortunately, the onus is upon us to have to figure out how we're going to vote, because we're the only ones that can decide how, so please, I want to hear everything you all have to say. We're going to have 12 meetings if we need to, so everybody will get a chance. Maybe somebody's going to have some suggestion we didn't think of. Trust me, this is just the first of many, but we're just trying to wrap our heads around it right now, and we will hear from you, I promise. So it's a configuration thing?
Yeah, it's simply judging our facilities. It's not judging who's in the facility, because the people in there would, again, move to where the grade level is at. It's just, Cassett is a bigger, better equipped facility.
Okay. It's just like full gym, full caf,
Full caf, full library,
and again, I'm just trying to make
more
notes right now.
classrooms.
Okay. I will defer right now to someone else. Those were kind of right off the top of my head, the big ones, but I will defer to the next person.
Ms. Palish? Or Ms. Palish? Mrs. Farmer?
You do think a lot, but with me.
Yeah.
I just don't talk as much. Thank you. And first of all, I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. I know this is not an easy meeting to sit through for any of you. We're all on the same hard chairs, if it helps. Thank you, Dr. Sanchioni, for putting together two options. To Mrs. Polish's point, tonight is the first of what will most certainly be many conversations on this topic. The idea that perhaps the best way to close our gap in funding is to close an elementary school. That this is what's been proposed. We've also had an alternative proposed that essentially takes out all of the specialists, right? All the extra help that the kids have come to us for to ensure that we have a high-performing school district. So neither one of these is very pleasant, and that's understood across the room. And I think even if we were to close an elementary school, and I'm going to take Fort Barton out of the equation, even though that is the one that we're talking about, that only gets us so far. We will still lose some of that specialty staff in addition to the closure of the school. I have some of my own, perhaps ideas, some of my own questions with regard to potential savings at some of the other schools, and I think that in future meetings we should discuss those, and perhaps as school committee members come forth with our own ideas. But I am looking forward to hearing from our community if there are alternatives to what are being presented here that can have a minimal impact on your children, or as minimal an impact as possible. That is our goal. I think, any one of us would agree to that. And, coming away with this, how it may be one of these, a hybrid. It could be something entirely different that no one has thought of so far. So please do express your feelings. We are here to, we do want to listen to you. We are being transparent with this process. We will be transparent with this process. We are not making decisions this evening. These are simply proposals that we're out here to discuss for the first time. That's all I have right now.
Thank you. Ms. Spava? Mr. Dakotas?
Yes, I actually have a lot to say. Thank you. So I reiterate, thanks for coming out. It's good to see people under the circumstances, not like this. So I've been on your side. I've sat on the other side. I've yelled at people, budget committee meetings, town council meetings. I fought for all day K. I yelled at some of you up here. Sorry about that again. So I know what it's like to be passionate. We moved to Tiverton 20 years ago. I have a son that's in the Navy. He went to school here. He's a great human being. He learned a lot. I have two kids that are here now. although they don't go to Fort Barton, I think, like Mrs. Farnworth said, it's really not about Fort Barton, or if it was about Pecasset. And we would have angry Pecasset people here and not Fort Barton, or Ranger, sub it out, whatever it may be. So the famous saying is, we don't need another weatherman to tell it's going to rain. We need someone to tell us how to stay dry. So ideas are great. Coming to this conclusion of two options is just what we ask, to have something to chew on, somewhere to start. Although I would say this is very painful, when I chose to run for school committee over 3 years ago, I knew some of the things that I would get into would be hurtful. And one of the first things I did on the school committee was, on a Zoom call, I had to lay off a lot of people. And that was very self-deflating. This is probably that times 3, 4. This is very, 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 very sad. But as a community, we want to have the best education for our kids, the best experience. I have happy, educated children. I'm happy that I'm here. I just want to say I came from a town, if you don't know me, I came from Middletown. I see one person in the room I'm looking at that's from Middletown. When I went to school in Middletown in the 70s, early 80s, we had 5 elementary schools. And the one I went to closed, Linden School. And I had to go to a school called the Quinnick School. And I cried. I was in 4th grade. I was upsetting. But I made a lot of new friends. And then over the next few years, we closed Oliphant School. We closed Kennedy School. So now Middletown has 2. They used to have 5. Now they have 2. And they're a shrinking district. So I know what it's like to be in a community that loses schools, and it's hurtful, and there was a lot of yelling, a lot of upset people. What I will say is, together, we have to make a decision. We do want to hear from the community. In the end, 5 of us have to make a decision. It's not going to be fun. I don't think any of us are going to tell you that we enjoy doing this, but we will make the best decision, and sometimes the best ideas come from the people that give it to us. So please email us, call us, text us, come to the meeting, speak. We don't want to do this. I don't want to walk around town and go to CVS and have people talking about me and we're evil. We're here to try to solve a problem. The problem is a big deficit. We spelled it out for you, and we want to try to solve the deficit the best we can without hurting kids or people that live in the town, whatever it may be. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll be really brief because I'm more interested in hearing from you guys than maybe you are from hearing from me. But one thing is that to live together is to share a common fate. And so we're all in this together. And ultimately, while we have to vote a recommendation to the town council and then the town council has to adopt a budget, it is up to the voters to decide what the budget is. So it is up to all of you and to all of us in our vote to figure out what to do about this. So I would encourage you to familiarize yourself with the budget process if you haven't had an opportunity to do so as well beforehand. That was kind of how I got into this, was actually going to some of the, what were they called, financial town meetings when we were having them, and they were pretty raucous. This is looking quite calm compared to that. So I commend you on that. But familiarize yourself with the budget process, come to the meetings, watch what's going on. As I think has been said, we are not making any final decisions tonight by any means, but we need to solve this problem one way or another. And the more input you can give to us, the more you can participate in this decision, the better. And we will have as many meetings and talk to as many people and try to figure out as many things as we can. Please also try to understand that there are very fixed issues, meaning the transportation, the contractual increases in our energy, the requirement to meet the IEP goals of different students so that sometimes they have out-of-district placements. All of these things are costly and many things are beyond our control. But the one thing that is not beyond our control is the ultimate budget that is voted by the taxpayers, by the citizens. And I really prefer to call everybody citizens because I think of myself as a citizen, not a taxpayer. And what I mean by that is I hope to participate in the life of the town, not just pay it taxes. So I'm going to open up the floor to members of the public. What I would ask you to do is just to come to the podium. If there's a huge number. Please try and limit your comments or questions to a couple of minutes. And when you do come, just be sure that the microphone is on. There's a little red light that tells you that that's the case. And just state your name and address.
So I'm not a resident. I'm Chris Carter. I'm the town administrator.
Still have standing. We'd love to hear from you.
I have some real reservations about some information I heard today. I do ask if you ever do get to a point where you decide to close any of the elementary schools, especially any that are under bond, that you have a full-throated public hearing, because doing this under the guise of a budget is completely wrong. It's a violation of open meetings laws.
This is a full-throated public hearing, Mr. Cotta.
No, it's not agenda.
And if you have,
This is not on the agenda. This is not on the agenda. And it's the people who voted in this town to fund 3 brand-new schools. The bonds are still valid on them. If you decide that you're going to walk away from a school, we still have to pay the bonds. As a matter of fact, the bonds might be callable and have to be reissued under higher interest rates, and the housing aid goes away.
Yep.
So you've got millions of dollars worth of decisions that are going to affect not your budget, but the rest of these citizens' budgets. So there are some significant issues you need to look at.
there are many significant issues that you need to look at as well. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Understand that the town council actually sets your budget. We do not.
Yeah.
We are legally limited in what we can put forward, and your town council will do their deliberations. That was changed several years ago. We no longer have a financial town meeting. We no longer have a financial town referendum. They have the unenviable task of having to now make a budget for the entire town, which includes the schools. We can only ask for so much, but they can give more than we ask for. So, I don't envy the task, but we certainly will we understand the bond issue. Several of us have been involved in town politics for decades, so we certainly understand that. And again, this is the first time we've seen anything, so we do appreciate the information, and we will take that under advisement. But man, I would love to hear from you guys. Hi.
I'm Shannon McNamara.
Hi, Shannon.
I've been to the past few school committee meetings. I have emailed all of you, and I do appreciate those of you who have answered my bulleted list of questions that I had asked. I do have a very kind of pointed question. Now, we've lost how many students this past year? Was it 60 total? Now, of those 60, how many of them have been lost because parents have chose to homeschool versus we've completely lost them from the town? Do we have that number?
I can say to you that our homeschool numbers track about the same every year. We haven't seen an increase in homeschool numbers.
Okay. So we're looking at, we may have actually lost 60 students,
Yeah,
because their parents have left.
Right. The entire
Tiverton.
state of Rhode Island, and we have a chart we can share with you. I mean, almost every community in Rhode Island school district has lost students.
I mean, not for nothing, our costs in town, like the cost to live here, even without our property taxes being reassessed for the last 3 years, it doesn't matter. They go up every year. Who's seen theirs go up every year? So.
What about the new casino that's supposed to bring all the revenue?
I wasn't here for the casino vote. I will say I've only lived here for the past 2.5 years, but we chose Tiverton because of schools. So now I'm looking at, based on the state numbers that I'm seeing, where they're retracting so much aid, we're losing students, and that's a big factor of that. But we are valued, I'm assuming, so high as a town that they don't need to help us. But
They don't think they need to help us,
they don't think
correct.
that they need to help us. Exactly. So I'm in essence going to pay way more on my property taxes this year to get far less services for my 2 children, which is the reason I moved here. So why did I move here? And I know you guys can't answer that for me, but what is going to make me stay in town and have, you know, a reason to fight for the kids in this town, a reason to fight for, you know, my fellow, you know, townspeople, and not just put my house up for sale and have somebody from New York come in, buy my house, and use it as a summer home, which is what's happening, and have zero stake in what happens at any of these meetings.
No,
If I could say something, sorry. Do you mind if I say something?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
please.
So I know when I started on the Budget Committee in 2018, our tax rate was about $19.40, and I think today it's in the 15s. Am I right on that? Probably 15s. So our tax rate,
$14.90.
our tax rate has gone,
Tax rate goes down, but the evaluation goes up.
correct, the tax,
Balances-
correct. So
balances off the other.
My tax payment will never go down,
Right.
let's be honest.
So I moved here 20 years ago. So my tax payment really hasn't changed in a while, in quite a few years. The thing about the casino is, and I just want to address this, so some things are just opinionated. And the casino money, which is controlled, again, all money is controlled by the municipal side, that money is in an account, and that money generally is used for one-time purchases, not to offset anything like taxes. Like when the casino closed during the pandemic and they weren't open, we weren't getting the money. So if we were depending on the money and we weren't getting the money, that'd be a problem.
Okay, I
So-
didn't ask.
No,
about
no,
the
but I
casino.
heard it, I'm only looking,
Okay,
I'm
no.
sorry. I know I heard it out there about casino money. I will tell you, I wouldn't ever suggest using that money to pay bills. You could use it to fix things or build things that are one-time but not recurring, because God forbid that casino closes and they move out of town. There's more money we have to go find. So that, to me, my personal opinion, that would never be a
Well,
good idea.
and that's really not our purview, Mike. I mean, that's a council decision. The school committee has no say on that, what the casino, you know, again, we can only, we have a budget, we have a deficit, we have to close it. We have no say on how casino money gets used. We have no say on how the $10 million of fund balance over, you know, gets used. You know, we have, our job is limited to balancing our budget. So I hear you. I will say to you, that's part of the reason as a committee, I'm going into my 13th year, that we chose to use one-time funds is we did not want to see education hurt. And we wanted people to see that value, and we wanted to, you know, understanding that, you know, we cut some staff because, you know, we did see a decrease in enrollment and we reacted, but we do want to try to provide the best quality that we can given the funding. And that's part of the reason we chose to, if we had one-time funds, we used them. You know, that's.
I think that you might run into, you know, ultimately, if it is going to be student count, you're going to have a lot of angry parents whom will choose to leave if their children, like, my son is going to need a lot of those services.
No, we agree.
So what am I going to do as a parent? Just have him go without? I mean, that's something that I'm going to have to figure out.
Yeah.
And he's only going into kindergarten next year. So, you know?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Thanks.
Yeah, Dr.
Ms.
Sanchioni.
McNamara, before you leave,
No, I-
you'd asked
can
the
you
question, you know, why should I stay?
Yes.
And my answer to you is, when the Tiverton Public Schools are appropriately funded and appropriately staffed, we produce amazing results, and we've demonstrated that for the last 4 years. And that's all we're asking
I've been very happy with
for.
my daughter, like, you know,
Yeah.
at Ranger School. She's in the first grade, extremely happy. And so that would break my heart to have to make that decision, you know?
Absolutely, because and it's not like we have a frivolous budget, or we do a lot of things outside the norm. I mean, we provide a high-quality education with what we have, but when, you can't do it with that, I agree. So
Yeah.
the confidence is, hey, look, if we can keep our people, we promise you we'll have a great education system.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McNamara, please don't leave.
Sure.
No, and I wrote your name down because I really didn't know your full name. First of all, your presence here at the last several meetings has not gone unnoticed. You have been quite often the only parent at our meetings. And that says a lot to your commitment to following the educational system here in Tiverton. So, and to your answer, why wouldn't I move?
it's parents like you becoming engaged and interested that can help move things forward. We're handling a very difficult task tonight, but had it not been so controversial, I can guarantee you, you might be the only one here.
Would you like to come on, you know,
But,
Tuesday nights?
but we welcome the parental involvement, the participation, and I just want to congratulate you and ask you, you know, as your time permits, to continue, please.
I will.
We value your
I will
opinion.
definitely be here. You'll definitely see me with my Patriots hat on. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Hi, Corey Marchand. Thank you for hearing me out earlier. I just have a couple of thoughts to share. In terms of the reading and math specialists, I do think that the plan is rather short-sighted. I think my concern is that, in particular with the younger students, the K-2 students, if you're not giving them the intervention and support when they need it when they're young, what's going to happen is that you're going to create learning gaps, and those students are going to end up on IEPs, and you're going to have a larger SPED budget later. So I really think that not continuing with those reading and math specialist services at all grade levels, but in particular where we know kids fall apart in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, that is going to be a mistake in the long run. So I just urge everyone to think about that long-term impact. Another point I wanted to make was, I know we talked a little bit about transportation, and it was shared that we're under contract, and I just urge the board to explore those contracts. There are amendments made to contracts all the time, right? So like, I understand that we're under contract, but still looking at those outside vendors and those options of like, can we amend this? Can we make changes? The transportation one in particular, are there opportunities for neighborhood stops versus stopping at individual houses? Can we make less routes? Can we combine routes? Is there opportunity to save in that regard? I also just noticed, you know, in thinking about some of these positions, so like the school nurse. So yes, this plan would eliminate a school nurse and there'd be a savings there, but then you potentially are creating a larger population in the middle school or in the other schools, and naturally they're going to end up needing another nurse because it's going to become an unsafe situation with one nurse tending to 500 kids. So I think like in some cases, it looks good on paper, but in the long run, what's going to happen is we're creating a problem somewhere else. And I just think if we don't pause to think about that and consider, like, okay, is it actually safe? Do we want one nurse tending to 500 plus students? Or does it make more sense for us to keep those smaller groups? Or potentially, are we going to need to hire because it's not working? I think my last point that I just wanted to share was an idea just regarding, like, raising funds. Like, have we thought at all about like corporate sponsorships or donors? While I'm not naive to think that we can raise $3 million, I do think that there are organizations and there are businesses that are looking and are eager to support education, and that just might be an avenue to explore further.
Thanks.
I do want to just quick regarding the transportation. Unfortunately, Rhode Island transportation is a monopoly, meaning we had one bid. Amy, correct?
No,
We have one bid.
We had one bid.
pretty sure they're not going to
That's actually
open the
unbelievable.
contract.
Yeah, so one of the things, and our legislators are great, upstate, we've talked to them every year, and they try to bring it up every year, is talking about having a state transportation contract, because all 39 cities and towns trying to negotiate these contracts with one vendor really puts you at a disadvantage. So very, very good point, and definitely something that I know certainly everybody in the state, all the educators in the state are very aware of that. Out-of-state tuition for special ed, that's another thing. We have no say. They basically say, here's your 12% increase, take it. So I think part of it is really working closely with our legislators, and ours are great. They really do hear what we have to say, but try to get the people at the state level to understand you are just strangling these districts with these monopolized contracts. Would you agree, Amy?
Yes, and if I may, we have reached out to our transportation contractor as well as a second one, and we've asked not necessarily to renegotiate, but to potentially consolidate routes and things like that. And because it's a monopoly, the answer was no. And we even asked for assistance with our statewide transportation for the out-of-district placements, and our transportation contractor said no. So
That's unfortunate, but I am pleased to hear that you've looked into it, so I appreciate that. Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
John Edwards again, Sepauwett Ave, and future father of a student at Fort Barton next year, provided we can actually get it registered. Website doesn't exactly work. I just want to call out, because there's been some mention on the casino monies, and while I am on the council, we sat in this very room not long ago and committed about $6.2 million over the next couple of years to fund things like renovating the gym. We've committed those dollars to, rehabbing the bathrooms. All of the capital expenditures in this town that ordinarily the town would have to tax the residents for are coming out of the casino money. So while it's not going directly to fund operations, it is covering one-time costs. So when you see the ambulance drive down the street, when you see the new police car drive down the street, when you walk into the new gym, when that's eventually completed, all of that is paid for by the casino, in addition to the property tax revenue that the casino pays, and in addition to the hotel and meals and beverage tax that the casino pays. So it's not like the casino dollars were going to ever be this boondoggle that, pays for everything in the town, but they're paying for a significant amount of dollars, something to the tune of a couple $1 million a year in capital expenditures that the town council has deferred over the last decade. And we haven't done things like replacing ambulances and replacing, fire trucks and, buying new plows. I'm sure everybody remembers over the last couple of years when we had plow trucks that the state wouldn't even certify, to operate on the street. We have to replace those things, and we kicked the can down the road for so long to make sure that we could funnel dollars into the school system. So I take offense to the fact that, it's been intimated by this board here that, the council controls the money and we're not doing anything with it. We're spending a lot of money in capital expenditures on the school system.
I never said that, John. Very respectful of the council. I was very respectful of what a difficult job you guys have. I don't think anybody, and if that's how you took it, I do apologize, meant to say anything other than that's just not our purview. That, we have no control over those dollars. No one ever said they weren't being spent wisely. Absolutely, I actually think Mr. Dakota said they were. So.
Okay. Is over next?
Hi, Jordan Riley of 13 Fieldstone Lane. I have a question about actually two questions. First of all, tonight, why were none of us here or in any of the school districts made aware of the fact that this major issue was going to be brought up? Especially given the fact that this has been a concern for the past 5 years. Why has this not been addressed with us? Why has this issue not been brought up with town council present? What do we need to do to remedy this problem? I know we can all sit here and talk about how upsetting this is, as it is, of course, to all of us as parents. I have 3 kids in Fort Barton. We chose to stay here as opposed to move to Portsmouth because of this school system. You take this away, you've taken away the draw for Tiverton. Our elementary schools are what set the precedents for our children's education. You change this. You maximize the classroom sizes. You reduce the quality of the education. The teachers have an added burden. They're not able to provide the same quality of service to our kids. You have parents moving. You have an added liability on the town with property values decreasing, taxes having to increase in turn. I mean, this is going to create a domino effect of problems. If the town can't see that this isn't just a one school-based issue, this is an entire town issue. Why weren't we made aware of this sooner? I'm certain that all of us in town would have been here 5 years ago had we been made aware, especially tonight. Most of the people who I reached out to weren't even sure if they should show up because because this wasn't on the agenda. This should not be hidden. This is a serious problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, can I, Mr.
Well, it wasn't on the agenda, just to be clear.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Corey, to your question,
Yeah.
regarding tonight, So there's an email that's gone out to parents, every parent in the district inviting you next Tuesday. The reason why, and I sort of intimated this earlier for tonight, was two things. A, we wanted to talk to the staff who were impacted by this, and the school committee wanted to see it first and debate it and to discuss it. So being here tonight is great, but I guess I want to express to you that there's going to be multiple opportunities to dialogue with you starting next Tuesday night.
And we
here.
appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll continue to do that. So it wasn't by any, I don't want you to think it was malicious and/or.
Well, we had 5 years.
Well, I'll let the committee talk about 5 years,
Every,
because they have
every
been
budget
fighting
committee
this.
meeting, every school committee meeting for the last 5 years, again, having been on it for 12, we brought this issue up. We said we have to quit using one-time funds. We are headed for a disaster. The chickens are going to come home to roost, and we would use fund balance, or we would use ESSER, or we would use, whatever we could. And we've been saying it in front of the council, everywhere we could say it. It's been written about. Our meetings are online.
If you don't mind,
talked
can I-
about how much money we had to use last year out of our fund balance to balance our budget. It's the only reason people are here now, unfortunately, is because we've run out of one-time funds.
Right.
If we could cover this with $3 million of one-time funds, I
And
don't
why
think
are
anybody
we
would be
relying
here.
specifically on one-time funds? Why haven't we had this conversation with the town council present and addressed possible opportunities to
So-
reallocate funds from other areas?
Every budget cycle, we make a certain request previously of the budget committee that then sends it on to the voters. Now the town council sends it on to the voters. And some years we get what we ask for, and other years we do not. And, you could have, in the chart, not what's up there right now, but I'll go back to fiscal year 21. We had asked for 4%. We were voted 2% by the budget committee, and then it was actually leveled out at 0 because that was the year of COVID. I can't remember exactly what the request was last year. I think it was 4, and I think we got 3. Yeah, we got 3. So these are ongoing. You can. One of the things I encouraged people was to sort of educate themselves and get involved. If you just look at the tapes from probably September on, you'll see we discussed this quite a bit.
Okay.
And then if you want to, if you're really bored, or if you really need to get to sleep.
I have 3 kids. I don't find myself in that position. At Fort Barton,
my
I should add.
recollection is that the first time we were sort of aware that there was a structural deficit that was going to be an issue was probably the spring of 2019. And we have discussed it every year. And we use the one-time funds because they're available, and our goal, the superintendent's goal, and we support that, is to always maximize education and preserve the services that we have because of precisely what, you said. You come here before the schools. And again, I'll sort of make the point. It is all, while we can vote a number, we're legally constrained to 4% of the local levy to ask for. The town council ultimately puts the budget before the voters, but it's the voters that decide. And there's even an option for the voters to create their own budget to put before the voters as well, to the other voters.
The voters don't decide anymore. It's just the council.
No. They decide the ballot. They decide the question.
I do have one more question.
Not anymore. It's the
They can.
council.
Okay. Right. Sorry. They can create. Okay. So I misspoke. You're right. There's no longer a ballot. The town council adopts the budget. If the budget is unopposed, for want of a better term, then that's the budget. There is a mechanism by which the voters, an elector or voter, can create a budget themselves and then get enough signatures to get it, and then there's a ballot.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
the last question I have is, obviously, I'm sure a lot of us have heard talks of new developments in Tiverton. And how are we going to support, if we all vote to close one of our elementary schools and consolidate all of these children into two schools, two very small schools? How are we going to support, say, 200 some odd new homes with
Any
children?
district is vulnerable to changes in the demographics of the student population, up to and including, you know, sort of kids with higher cost IEPs, or kids with high cost IEPs moving out of the district. Or, you know, actually, in the town I grew up in, they were building a school almost every year for the first few years that we lived there, because there was such an expansion in the school age population. That's probably not going to happen in Tiverton. But yeah, the population changes, and you
Understood. And what do we do? Close it and then reopen it a year from now when all these homes
Dr. Larkin,
pop
can I
up?
say something? Do you mind? Do you mind if I address your
No,
question?
please do,
And I'll try
please
my
do.
best to
Please
answer
do,
it.
please do.
So those are future things.
Right.
Those
But
could
it's
be-
relevant because there's construction.
I would
taking
never
place.
say it's.
Well,
yeah.
actually,
So,
there isn't.
I have the floor. Could I
There
please?
is.
Could I please
There's
speak?
several new
Yeah, yeah.
neighborhoods
All right.
popping up.
So,
Everybody's out of control.
yeah,
You need to
order.
bring the gavel.
Okay, all right,
We can't
okay,
talk at
all right.
once.
So I'm going to let Mr. Dakotas respond to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to try to give you some information. So those projects have not been approved yet by the town. There's talk of these things happening.
Exactly.
These are years away, years. What we're dealing with is now.
Right, but even so what you're referring to, I know exactly what you're referring to. Yes, not approved yet. We do, however, have several new neighborhoods popping up all over Tiverton. We see our property values increasing as a result of what our school districts have been able to do for our kids.
But our enrollment is declining still. Our enrollment is declining right now. It's not going this way. It's going. I'm just being facts.
Okay.
We're not going this way. We're going this way. That's why we're losing money. So I know what you're saying. Believe me, I live off Fish Road, and they demolished all the trees. And someday there will be probably houses there. Now maybe it'll be 2 years from now, maybe 5 years from now. But what I'm saying is your point's not valid. Isn't not valid. We all know that probably could come, but we have to find a solution for this year, but we have a couple of months to do it. So I think we're better concentrating on the now. Some of your questions were very valid. What Dr. Larkin was trying to explain, there used to be these petitioner budgets, and there were years where voters did go and vote, instead of they vote for the budget committee budget, they voted for the petitioner budget.
Right.
We didn't get much money. So we have people from our town council here tonight, people from our school committee. We sat at the town council president's house, we licked stamps, we sent things out to get $600,000 for the schools that year. A lot of people worked really hard to try to fund the schools over the years. So, and that includes many members on this own, sitting here, many members of your council. And you know what we did? We worked together, because we are a community in a town. We did that together. So that's what we'd like to try to do, is work together and not against one another.
Okay, so what recommendations can you make for us as parents and members of the community to get to do what we need to do for the town to keep Fort Barton?
I will say one thing, and this might not be popular, but I'm going to say it anyway. 2 meetings ago, we did present where the superintendent said, "Don't be alarmed." Mrs. Powell said at the end, "I'm alarmed." And we gave a number that was $4 million. And then we had another school committee meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. And it was out there. We weren't hiding it. It was $4.7 million. We had one person come to the meeting. So we're not trying to hide it. We have a problem. And what Dr. Sanchioni said is valid. We could have caused an uproar at that school with the teachers, the staff, and trying to just get to today. And now the real conversation begins. So trying to answer that question. We said we wanted this to be transparent. And you're going to have many opportunities. But we didn't want the last 2 weeks of those people that go to Fort Barton and work there to be like this.
Well, they are now.
They are today. They are today. But
Yeah.
but they weren't. But would you rather have it do it for 2 weeks and have people like that?
Okay, so again,
Well, that's why we did it today.
all right, Mike. All right, I'm gonna call order on people. So I guess my answer to your question is get involved with the budget process. You know,
So it sounds like
attend.
this is a council decision more so than a
The
school
council,
committee?
so we vote a recommended budget to the town council. The town council hears from us, hears from all the other entities in town. They ultimately adopt a budget, and then there's a mechanism for the voters, if a voter wants to gather signatures to, and I won't get into the details of it, but there is an option for the voters to present an alternative budget to the town council.
Okay, so is next week the when you would recommend, or do you have a date?
I would look at the agendas of the town council and look at our agendas, and when the budget's being discussed, come to those meetings. There's also.
But that's school committee, not council, right?
It's both. I mean, we discuss it, and we discuss our budget. Town council is going to be discussing both the school's budget as well
Okay.
as.
We
all
just
the
want to
towns.
make sure we're at the right place at the right time.
Both, I would say.
Yeah, and that's why we said is like, we have a little piece of it, it's the schools, and there's a number we can put forward, and we can't go over it. We have to have a balanced budget. And the council, much harder job, they're looking at everything. They're
Yeah.
looking at police, fire, DPW, and they're going to be having those discussions as well, taking into consideration what you all say to them for education. Is there a middle ground? I don't know. I don't know what their budget looks like, that they, that's their purview, and I would encourage you to go and listen and become educated on that side as well.
So one thing we do tentatively have scheduled is that the Rhode Island Department of Education is going to come, and we're going to have a joint meeting with the town council. Yeah, the town council and
April
the
when?
school committee. April 1st.
April 1st, okay.
And that's for RIDE to explain to us why you're cutting our aid 1.2 million.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
So we kind of all want to understand
okay.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jocelyn Sherman, Sandra Lee Lane. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. This budget problem has been going on for a long time. I've gotten involved years ago, and I'm really glad you have this slide up because there's 1 year, 2019, 2020, that says the appropriation is 5.1%. Is that the year in the spring of 2019 we had a petitioner's budget?
Yeah, it was. That was
Okay.
Mr. Mantel's
Yes.
budget.
And
yeah.
so when we've been in this position before, petitioners came forward and proposed a budget, and we got to vote on it. With the new process, we still could potentially have a petitioner's budget?
You can. It's a different mechanism. There's a higher signature requirement
To get the budget into
To get a-
consideration?
to get a petitioner's budget on the ballot.
It's a higher signature requirement, and it's you basically are limited to making cuts. You can't take revenue.
Okay.
So,
And it's
yeah,
still limited to
and there's a
4%.
cap.
4%
Yeah.
of the tax levy
Yeah.
can't be exceeded. That's not true.
Well, so, Mr.
All right.
Cotta.
None of us is a lawyer, so anyway, Mr. Chairman.
But anyway.
Yeah, so that's
yeah.
why I saw the 5.1%.
But you're right, that was the year we could go and.
Right. So it sounds like maybe some clarification in
So
potentially going above
so the
4.
total, again, we have gone through this with our attorneys in the past and would probably have to go through it with them again to understand it precisely. But my recollection of that whole process was that you are not limited to 4% increase in the schools allocate. So we can only ask for 4%.
Right.
But the voters can decide to give more proportionally to the schools. It's just that the total budget. Okay.
Can I,
Yeah.
So we might need to follow up with this one.
You may need to follow up with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just to ground ourselves in reality, though, we're looking at millions.
Right.
As a shortfall. And I don't think I or anyone else believes that we could turn to our town and get that money.
Right.
That's just, we don't see that as being realistic, let's face it.
Yeah.
So this is why we're faced with the discussion we're having tonight.
No,
Yeah.
totally
And-
understood.
It's facing reality.
It's a consideration of, does it help defray it somewhat? Does
Right.
it get parents more involved? That's how I got involved. I went door to door.
It's certainly something where
fight
you
for
could
the
be
budget.
looking at other options than
So-
closing a school, for instance. But
Yeah.
also another useful number to remember is that about $350,000 is 1% of our
Yeah.
budget. So when the state cuts $1.2 billion,
Yep.
That's 3 and change %. So you can't even, you can just about make up what this cut in state aid was by increasing the local levy by 4%. I'm not even sure you can get there. I have to do the math again, but.
Okay. I know, unfortunately, this is many, many years in the making, but I appreciate
Correct.
the question and hopefully some clarification.
Yeah.
I appreciate the acknowledgement that you heard us over those last 5 years.
5 years. It's been
Longer,
My
yeah.
kids are in high school. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
So, thank you. Anyone else? Going once,
If you just want to make comments, that's okay too, guys.
going twice?
And we'll have more.
Hi, Candace Magnet. I have a question, Peter. With the second option of Fort Barton closing, how would that look for those students? What schools would they be dispersed to?
So tentatively, we'd have pre-K, K1 at Ranger, 2, 3 at Pocasset, and the 4th grade would go to the middle school, and that would run on an elementary schedule. So they arrive late, leave late, and working with the middle school administrators, they've singled out 5 classrooms on the first floor. So these kids would really have an elementary experience within a middle school.
Okay, so for a parent like myself who has 3 kids, all at different grade levels, how am I supposed to manage this, getting kids to 3 different schools? I'm sure I'm not the only one who has kids in multiple grades.
Right. So you have your start times would still be staggered.
Okay, but I live pretty much Little Compton. You expect me to now travel all the way to Pocasset and then backtrack to Ranger and then to the middle school. And then, I just don't see how logistically this is going to work for every single parent. And not only does this affect Fort Barton, you're now switching around parents at Ranger and Pocasset as well. So this isn't just a Fort Barton issue.
No, we acknowledge that from the beginning.
I would really hope that that's known next time so that it's not just Fort Barton parents here, because it does affect the other 2 schools as well. And I'm sure they're not going to be thrilled with that news.
So Candace, you've heard me say this a couple of times, but it's worth saying again. There was a sequence of events that were taking place, not to exclude parents at all. And you should have in your email, every parent in the district could have an email right now inviting them to an event next Tuesday. So we will give everyone an opportunity to understand this. And, again, I'll reiterate what the school committee has said several times. The decision hasn't been made, but you're looking at 2 lists up there, and they're both horrific. They're not anything a superintendent or any administrator wants to do, but
right.
you got to solve the problem.
And, in a situation like this where pretty much every dollar does count to save money, I guess my other question is, I haven't been at every meeting, but I have been to a lot in the past, and I do know this has been an ongoing issue as of years ago. I know I've been here for it. It's a snowballing, we're just Band-Aiding the situation. However, knowing that, and every single one of you knowing that, why are you personally still giving, what was it, a 7% raise to all admins? And with that 2% cut of admins was, I believe, in your first proposal, was it?
Option 1.
Well, so first let me address, no.
Cut admin raises from 2.5 to 1.
Right.
Does that include you?
I've actually told the school committee I'm taking a 0.
Oh, okay. So over the last, how many years we've known about this massive deficit, why have raises still been given instead of saving that money?
We have contracts with 2 unions, and we negotiate in good faith with those people. And just like you and everyone sitting in here, everyone is facing an economy that's rising in prices and things like that. If we want to retain our teachers, we've got to create a salary
But you're not
schedule.
retaining them when they're going to be losing their jobs. I'm sure they would have
Well, you're
not
asking
taken
you're
the
asking me
raise.
2 different questions. You're asking me why we've given them raises. We've given them very modest raises. So
Right, but
the last contract
it's
was
an
2,
issue that's
2.5.
been ongoing.
Well, you can't.
You've known that we've been in a major hole.
And
yet-
can I just, we knowing that is the reason we negotiated 2%, 2%, 2%, 1%. We knew this So instead of giving them the 3.5, 4, 5 they probably deserve and all earned, especially
Did
over
they
those
recently
COVID
just
years?
get 7%?
No one got 7.
No one's got
No.
7, no.
No, you'd have to, there's
Yeah,
no 7%.
2.5, 2.5. So, you know, we were very aware, and our unions were very aware and worked
Yeah.
really, really closely with us to come up with, but to Jerry's point, they work really, really hard. They deserve to be paid for
Oh,
the
I
job
totally
that they
agree.
do.
But
So-
if it comes down to firing teachers, closing schools, I'm certain admins would probably say, I won't take, you know, a big of a raise knowing that this is the long-term solution. I mean, I don't feel like, I definitely don't feel like getting rid of every single special, you know, is an option at all. And is that across all Tiverton schools, not just elementary level?
It's every school.
In option one.
So for the kids that do need that help, are they going to be bused to other schools that offer that? Or they're just going to go without?
See, this is the
Some
dilemma
can't.
we're facing is that you can't cut your core teachers, right? And I'm happy to give anyone a copy of our budget book where we list every staff member in the district, and you can go through it and if you want to pick people off. But once you look at our core teachers, all of our classroom teachers at the elementary, middle, and high school, where do you turn to? You turn to people who aren't required but are very valuable and provide an amazing service. And that's the dilemma we're facing right now. But, our raises have been modest. No administrator's taken a 7% raise. It's always matched.
I'm not talking, like, you guys, not teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You personally, and is there public record of your raises?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I will look into that
Yeah.
then. All right, I guess that's it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to come up to the, Shannon?
We just haven't done the email yet. I just wanted to say.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Shannon.
Can I speak with you?
There you go.
Real quick, after,
Up here or just later?
I do just have one more quick request, if it's okay. Just so we could be prepared for the next meeting. I know we talked about there's a lot of different options and different configurations that we can look at. Clearly, cutting all of our math and reading specialists and guidance counselors is not an answer. Clearly, that's never going to be a valid option. Nobody's going to ever vote for that. We know that. But I guess what I'm a little unclear of is why we haven't looked at some of our other salaries with other administration. You know, why haven't we looked at some other positions that could potentially shift or combine, or just some other different configurations within the different schools, where we're not cutting these clearly mandatory positions? That would be a huge detriment.
So to that question, Mr. Chairman, you know, on that slide up there, and you probably can't see it, it's the far right, you've seen a number of staff reductions. It was 27 one year, 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
We've cut administration. Matter of fact, in this
Yeah, I know
cut list,
about 5% this past year, right?
and on that list right there is our assistant special ed director. So we're cutting an administrative position, but when you look at our administrators, we got a principal in each school, we got an assistant principal at the middle and high school because they're big. I mean, we don't have a lot of excess administration in this district.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
in the past, we had a director of communications, we cut that position. In the past, we had more people in our technology department, we've cut those positions. So I guess I want to give you at least some confidence to know that we go through every position in the district, and every principal in this room will share that with you. And we sit in this room and like, what are we giving up? And we hate it. We absolutely hate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and things like expense reimbursement and
Gone.
things that
Gone.
for certain positions that may not be necessary, and things like bathroom renovations that may have not been necessary.
That's
That's
a different.
capital.
That's capital,
not-
that's
a
capital
different
money.
thing.
That's
Okay.
not in the
Oh.
operation budget.
Okay,
The
just-
vast majority of the salaries are not.
Just so
in the
we're
administration.
putting everything on the table, I think
Yeah.
it's fair for all of us that we understand what positions, because clearly letting go math and reading specialists is not an answer. It's never going to be
Right.
an answer.
So-
So we need to reassess that and
I
come up
think
with better
everything
options.
is on the table. That's what this
Yeah.
meeting is about.
Yeah. Well, for
And-
the next,
But there are things that were required by statute, that were required by contract, the transportation issue being.
yeah, and I'm not
related
referring to transportation. I understand that that's mandatory, but.
I think one of the places, to your point, that we started out months ago was, can we, is there any way to raise class sizes or consolidate that way? That's one of the first things we usually give to our principals is, can we, is there a way, are the classes have they shrunk enough so that we can consolidate classes and maybe get rid of a teacher? So that's like one of the first things we usually start with any budget, not even this year. But to your point, looking at that maybe again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something to definitely, we would love to have that information. I think I could speak for a lot of us when I say for next time, if
I will,
possible.
if you come next Tuesday, I'll make sure I show it to you.
I'll be here.
I'll have it.
All right, so, and I just, as a parent, just got the email, so it did go out, so it's out. Oh, okay. Must have been queued for 9 o'clock or something.
Hi, just a comment, Jennifer Joseph. My daughter's in the 5th grade with an IEP, and I just want to say thank you to the Fort Barton teachers. They did an amazing job, and without them, my daughter wouldn't be where she is today. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you for acknowledging them. All of our teachers are really
Yes,
great.
they
And I agree, Fort Barton is a very special place.
And I will venture to say, and again, might not be popular, I am reticent to balance the budget on the backs of our teachers. They deserve to be paid. They deserve everything they get. 2%, 3% is so modest, and that's what they've taken year after year. Understand that we're in a position now where we're going to have to cut them, but, to say, take 5 years of zero so that we, I don't even know that would have even got us there.
Which
Yeah, it
they
wouldn't
did
even, I mean,
several years ago.
the deficit is so large that, even saying that, but that is just so unfair. And by the way, they have taken years of zero in the past. They've at least 3, so. Oh, no, I'm just in general. No, I'm just in general, that I know our teachers have actually taken zeros 3 years in a row, Kristen? 5 or 6? So, they get it, but, like I said, that I'm just one person, one vote, but, boy, I'm to balance the budget on their backs and not give them increases. I don't think that's fair either. But
And even if they took zero, that's $800,000.
Yeah.
Is what all the steps
Yeah.
and lane changes were
But this was great,
contributing
and we
to.
continue to look. We continue to meet with you, meet with the superintendent, the principals, meet with the other administrators. There's no easy answer when you're looking at $3.5 million. So.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I am going to move on then to item 8, which is future meetings. So we've been trying to schedule a meeting with the town council and the school committee and the representatives from Rhode Island Department of Education. So I spoke with Town Council President DeMedeiros, and we're sort of tentatively set up for April 1st right now at 7. Here, there.
Dr. Larkin, if I could ask that it be held here, so I think with all of the...
No, I think we're going to hold it down at Town Hall.
With all the participation, though, don't you think it makes more sense?
We'll
in
get
a room this
tables to
size?
make it work. We'll make it work down at
Think so?
Town Hall. Yeah.
Okay.
What's your capacity? Like 100?
I'm just wondering about a lot of parents
Oh,
showing
it's
up.
more than this.
So we should be fine.
It's going to be more than this room.
Well,
The auditorium's sort of
That's an
awkward.
option.
I don't know if we should do the auditorium. It's
And it's just the RIDE presentation. There's no decisions. It's only.
It's RIDE. It's our state reps, because I think they should know what's going on. Our state senate, we've also invited. And it'll be town council and school committee. And I'm going to ask the budget committee if they'd like to come just to watch. But it's going to be a roundtable discussion among all of us.
All right. Yeah, I wonder about that too.
We've had meetings
I
there
don't
before,
know if
too.
you, we'll talk about it.
You guys decide.
Yeah, we'll talk about
All
it.
right.
Because I don't know what's available either.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's a problem.
All
I
right.
will say, given my work schedule, I will not be there, so there's one less.
All right.
We're doing it on a Monday night because usually they're not in session. The state reps aren't in session on a Monday.
All right.
Every other night's a little iffy. All right.
Okay. So, Mike and Elaine, you're okay with the first? Okay. Diane, you're okay with the first? I think you said you were. Okay. All right. Building committee on March 26th. Our next meeting is March 26th. Any other meetings or issues?
So, March 26th, our meeting, we're going to continue the budget discussion.
I expect so.
And to the point that several people have made tonight, let's try to make it, now that we've seen everything and we know, maybe we can, continue discussion of options. Option one, various specialists, et cetera. Option two, closing of a school.
Mm-hmm.
We
We can certainly make the posting more explicit.
Configuration of schools / closing of a school, trying to just, we can't give too much information because you've got to be able to post it.
Well, yeah, you have to post it in a way that,
Post it with just enough that,
so you can't post it, I mean, to that point, you can't post it too specifically that you're then constrained in your discussion. So, yeah.
One more thing.
Yep.
The town council's going to start budget hearings. We're going to do it on a Saturday.
Okay.
So just to let everyone know, we're going to do, the first one will be April 13th on a Saturday.
For the schools, you mean?
We don't know yet. I haven't fixed that schedule yet, but I will put it out.
Okay.
And then the second one will be April 27th on a Saturday, starting at 9
So you're
o'clock.
just saying those are the two dates
Those are
you're
the
going to...
2 days that we're going to be
and
doing budget.
We don't know where we're going to fall on
I'm
that.
going to put you somewhere in there, or I might have to have a third just for you. But we'll see. But those 2 are already. So if anyone's interested in what the town needs and what the town is spending, I encourage you all to come too, so you understand the entire budget. Okay?
Thanks. All right. Anything else for meetings? I don't think we need to go into executive unless we do. Okay, never mind. Then I'm going to ask for motion to go into executive session under Rhode Island General Law 42465A4, legal advice on FY25 budget.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
second, sorry.
I'll ask for a vote. Mr. Dakotas, say yes.
Yes, sorry.
Mrs. Pavo? Yes. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Ms. Palish? I vote yes, we're in executive.